ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ನಾನು ಮಣಿಭೂಷಣ್ ಡಿಸೋಜ, ಅಸಿಸ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಫೆಸರ್, ಗಣಕ ವಿಜ್ಞಾನ ವಿಭಾಗ, ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಪಿ ದಯಾನಂದ ಪೈ, ಟಿ ಸತೀಶ್ ಪೈ, ಸರ್ಕಾರಿ ಪ್ರಥಮ ದರ್ಜೆ ಕಾಲೇಜು, ಮಂಗಳೂರು ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರ. ನಿಮಗೆ ಆಧಾರದ ಸ್ವಾಗತ ಬಯಸುತ್ತಿದ್ದೇನೆ. ಇಂದು ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಮೊದಲನೆಯ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಒರಾಕಲ್ ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಕಲಿಯಲಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಇಂದಿನ ಕ್ಲಾಸಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಡೇಟಾ ಎಂದರೆ ಏನು, ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸ್ ಎಂದರೆ ಏನು ಮತ್ತು DBMS ಎಂದರೆ ಏನು ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ವಿಸ್ತೃತವಾಗಿ ಕಲಿಯಲಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಇದಾದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾವು ಅಪ್ಲಿಕೇಶನ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಡೇಟಾಬೇಸ್ ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆಯೂ ಕಲಿಯಲಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಮುಂದುವರೆದು ನಾವು ಫೈಲ್ ಬೇಸ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಮತ್ತು ಇದರ ಡ್ರಾಬ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ಕಲಿಯಲಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಸೊ ಮೊದಲಿಗೆ ನಾವು ಡೇಟಾ ಎಂದರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ತಿಳಿಯೋಣ. Let us first learn what is a data. A data is a fact. When I say fact, it could be anything. For example, it could be a name of the student. It could be some number obtained, the total number obtained by the student. It could be the address of the students. All of them are data. So data refers to the fact. Suppose if I measure the height of all the students and record them, they are going to be the fact that I am representing. Okay? So if you are able to record a fact, then that becomes a data. Now the data have implicit meaning. Suppose if I write like this, so is this a data? The answer is yes, it could be a data because it's a number. In the same way, if I have a picture of one of my friend, then that is also a data. So if I represent my friend's picture, then that is also a data. Similarly, if I have a movie, that can also become a data. A fact that I can store forms a data. Example for the data could be names of the student, maybe the telephone number of the student, the address of the student or a person. We can store this data maybe in a book. Suppose if it's an address or a telephone, we may store them in a book indexed by their alphabets, or we can also store them in the softwares like Microsoft Access or Microsoft Excel. But all of them form a data. Then what is a database? A database is a shared collection of logically related data. So what is a data? Data is a fact. Okay. Suppose if I want to store the name of the student, then this could be data. Maybe you can say this is the name of two students. Now suppose if I do like this, then you notice that even though this is a name, it's not related to the name of a student. So there is no logical relationship between the name India and the name of two students. So if you have logically related data, suppose if you store a logically related data together in a shared format, then you can think of calling it as a database. Now this, how do I say what it is logically related? Now the logical relationship depends on where that database is being used. For example, suppose if I have the same student, one student is studying in BCA, the other student is studying in, she is studying in BCom, then as a computer science faculty, I may not consider this name as logically related because I am interested in only in computer science students' name. So logical relation depends on where that information, where that data is being used. So how do I say what is a database? It's a shared collection of logically related data that is designed to meet the information needs of an organization. Okay? In other words, a database is a collection of related data with implicit meaning. So there is the data that you are collecting has some meaning. They are connected together. Suppose if I store all the photographs of BCA or BSc students, then I can say I have a database of BSc students' photos. In the same way, if I collect all the Kannada songs, maybe movie songs of 2018 and 2019, then I can say that I have a database of songs. So that you get the idea. So data is a fact. Okay? It could be when I say data is a fact could be just a number. So you have some number, this is a fact. Fact could be a set of text like it could be a picture, it could be a video, it could be anything. So that forms a data, remember, and you collect them together. You have a collection of that data in such a way that the data are logically related. Then we say that it is a database. Now, database have few properties. Now, what data you store in a database? So, it's a collection, I said. So, what data are you going to store in this, or what collection of data that you are going to store? Now, that depends on the properties. Now, the properties are, when I say it's a database, it represents some aspects of the real world. And we also call it as mini world. So, again, what's the meaning of that is, suppose you have this world. World consists of many things, many people, many kind of things. Now, we are not interested in all of them. We may be interested in some part. So this forms our mini world. So it's also called as universe of disclose. So for example, if I take the analogy of collecting names, so if I want to store the names, I am interested in storing the names of all the BSc students. That does not mean that the rest of the world students, they don't have their names. I don't simply consider their names. In the same way, if I want to store the names of all the BSc, the phone numbers of all the BSc students, then that forms my mini world. So it does not mean that rest of the world, they don't have the phone number. They have it, but I am not interested in that. So when we say a database, it represents some information or some data related to this mini world or universe of disclosed. When things change, for example, if I'm storing the phone numbers of all the students, when one of my students comes and says me, okay sir, my phone number has changed, I've changed my same, then there is a change in my world. In that mini world that I have here, there is a change. And I am going to highlight that in my database. In other words, changes in the mini world are reflected in the database. There may be a change in the rest of the world. Things may change, but I am not interested in the rest of the world. I am interested in this mini world. So only what changes are there in that mini world are only stored in the database. Next one is database is logically coherent collection of data with some inherent meaning into it. For example, suppose if I want to store the details of my student, then I will start with the roll number of the student. Then I will store the name of the student. Maybe then maybe marks and so on. Now, if I say the roll number is 100, so it may be true. And if I call this as say, then it may be a name of something, but this is not something which is logically connected. So a roll number of a word is not something a relevant name over here. Something that is connected. In the same way, if instead of this, if I write here, say 02/05/2001, then this is a date of birth. It's not the name, or it may be date of registration. Something that is not logically connected. So there must be, when you say it is a database, the data must be logically coherent. So it must be consistent. Again, I will give you one example. Suppose if you are storing the names 101 and then again 102, then like this without the register number, then again this is not logically coherent. They are not consistent. So that is the meaning of saying database consists of some logically coherent data. Okay. So if you try to do a random assortment of data, then you cannot simply store them in the database. The next one is, when we say it is a database, we simply don't use the database. First of all, we design that data. So we first understand what is the need. Why do we have to have a database? And what information or what data it's going to collect, how it is going to collect, how am I going to place them. So all of them are the design issue. So first of all, I have to design that database. Then I have to build that database. Somehow I have to do some coding or something. Then I have to build that representation. And finally, I have to populate. So just to give an analogy, so before you suppose you are all living in your house. So the first, what the architecture has done is your civil engineer has designed your house. So he has decided where the bathrooms will come, where the kitchen will come, where the bedroom will come, where the hall will come. That he has designed, and how I can go from hall to kitchen or hall to bedroom. So or where the door must come. That is the design. So looking at that design, somebody has built that house, and then you are living in it. The same way, you first design the database, then build it, then populate it, uh, And when you build the house is built for some specific purpose. So you know very well you have your bedroom in your house. If you go to a hotel also, you will find, or a lodge, you will find the bedroom, but the design is very different. So the bedroom that is designed in your house is for some specific purpose. Again, the bedroom that is designed in the lodge, it is designed for some specific purpose. Okay. So when I build a data, when I say it is a database, it is built by taking into consideration who is going to use that database. Okay, whether it is whether the database is going to be used in school, whether it is used in the universities, whether it is used in some commercial business place, and then they build the database. Also, which application is going to use it? What's the use of that particular? What's the application of that database? So looking at all these three things, so that is first of all, the database will represent some aspect of the real world. Then it has a logically coherent collection of data, and then it is built, designed and built for a specific purpose. So that is what is the database. When you look at a database, in a real database, it can have a very large size. For example, the database that stores your Aadhaar card details, so your Aadhaar card number, your phone number, and so on and so forth. The size, so entire India's population information is there in that database. So if you go to State Bank of India, they have the database that contains the details of all the customers or all the people who have an account in the state bank. So in the same way, if you go to Mangalore University, their database will contain the names and details of all the students. So a database in general has a very large size, and it may be complicated depending upon where it is being used. So for a simple school, the database may be very simple, but if you take the railway reservation, the database that is used by railways, or the database that is used by the Karnataka government as such to deal with the tax and other issues. So in that case, the database may have some complicated logical relationship. Okay. Again, when I say database, let me go back to the definition of the database. It's a collection. Remember, it's a collection. So that's the first thing. So that collection need not be always inside a computer. So you may have it, the database inside a computer, or you may maintain the database manually. What do I mean by saying manually? You may have a notebook or a ledger wherein you may start writing the information that is the collected data. So it is not that the database is only when you say it is a database, it does not mean that it is only computer and database. Database could be anything. So it could be even the manual data. Okay. So now let's try to give a good definition for this database. So a database is a shared collection of logically related data and a description of this data designed to meet the information needs of the organization. For example, if I want to create a database for computer science department, then I have to have a shared collection of all the related data. For example, if I just take the student, who is the student? If you ask that question, then I must know what is the name of the student, where he or she is studying. I must know which semester the student is studying. What is the performance of the student? Then I must collect all the marks scored by the student. So all of them are related to a particular student. So it's a related data. And how am I going to store them? What is the roll number? Now you are all familiar. So roll number are numbers. Okay. They are not text. Okay. Then if I say name of the student, then name is a set of characters. Now you are all familiar, you studied some C programs, so you know it's a set of characters. So the description, how many characters can be there in the name, how many numbers must be there, individual digits must be there in the roll number. Is this the roll number 100? Is this the roll number? Or is the 9-digit number is the roll number? So for example, 1901, something like this. Is this roll number? So I have to give the description of the data, how the data will look like, and then maybe how one data is related to the other data. Now that's not the end of it. You have the logically related data and its a description, which is designed to meet the information needs of the organization. For example, just to give an example in the commercial world, so you can have a database that is going to maintain the inventory information. Even though you are not familiar with the inventory, the word inventory refers to the stock. So stock is how many items that you have, and in your godown, how many items are being manufactured. So for that, when you manufacture something, you need a raw material. So how much raw material you have and how many finished goods that you have, that they are all formed, they come under inventory. And how many customers are there, what items they have brought, what orders they have placed, and how many, what is the way in which they are making the payment. Then this becomes a customer transaction. Then how many workers are there, how much payment you have to pay, what is the salary that you are supposed to pay, that comes under a payroll. That data is also stored in the database. Again, we come to the vendors who are going to supply us with the material, maybe raw material. Then their details are also stored there. So this is how a database is formed. Now we know that the database is a collection. We just remember that thing. Database is, if not anything, it's a collection. Now how do you create that collection in the computer? For that, you need a software. Okay? So that software is called as database management system. So a database management system is a collection of interrelated data. That is what you call it as database. So data which is a shared data which has some relationship between them. So your database and set of programs to access that data. So you know that a collection of related data is a database. You are all familiar with that. This word you are all familiar with. Now that so collection of data, that is what is called as interrelated data. That plus a set of programs that can interact with that particular collection of data and retrieve that data. Maybe you can put that data back, and that is what is called as database management system. So it's a collection of programs that helps you to create a database and maintain the database. What is the meaning of saying maintain the database? Once you create the database, you can add some data into the database, you can remove some data into the database. All these things, you can make changes to the structure of the database. All these things can be done with a set of programs, and that is set of programs is called as database management system. So it's a general purpose software. So what's the meaning of saying general purpose? It is not specific for something. It can be used by anybody else. That facilitates in doing 4 things. First of all, it helps you to define the database. What is the meaning of saying defining? Is how the structure has to look like. Again, take the analogy of your civil engineer. So the civil engineer, before building a house, he is going to say where the door will come, whether the front door will face east, west, or other side, or where the kitchen is going to come, or where the bedroom is going to come, how the doors are arranged, and what will be the height of the house, and so on and so forth. So that is how the house structure is defined. In the same way, when I say I want to create a database, I have to first define the database. How many pieces of information I am going to store. So for example, if I want to store the details of the student, is it just the roll number that I am going to store, or is it just the name of the student that I am going to store, and is it just the course of the student that I am going to store, or something else? When I say name, is it just the name, or am I going to store it as the first name, middle name, last name? So you are familiar with that particular thing. How am I going to store the database? First name, what is the length? How many characters can be there in the first name? And so on and so forth. These are all the definitions. So once you define your data structure of the database, then you need to construct it. Same way, get the analogy of the house. So your civil engineer will define how the house must look, the design of the house. Your constructor, or your the person who is going to build the house will look into the definition and is going to construct the house. Same way, we are going to look at the definition and we are going to build the database. Once the database is built, we can manipulate the data which is there inside it. What do we mean by saying that? We can add a new data, modify some data. If there is a correction, we can make the corrections to the data, delete the data. All of them comes under manipulating. And finally, we can share this data with the other applications or other users, so others can access this data. So for example, Mangalore University has created a database of all your marks, so that is shared with you, that is students, as well as with the colleges, as well as with the government. If you are getting the those who have applied for a scholarship in the SSP portal, you know, really you just enter your SSLC roll number or QC roll number. Automatically, the data is fetched. So that database of QC department or SSLC department, they have created a database and it is shared among the others. So the primary goal of the database management system is to provide a way in which you can store the data and retrieve the information in a convenient as well as an efficient manner. Okay. Let's look at some of the examples of the database system. So when you look at the enterprises, that is a big organization, database can be created for sales that contains information about the customer, how many products the customer has purchased, and so on and so forth. Database is also used in the accounting department, where they can create the account balances, assets, liabilities, and so on and so forth. Database is used in the human resources to get the details of the employees, like employee salaries, payment, their leaves, and so on and so forth. In the manufacturing, wherein they can keep track of the items which are there, the inventory of their in the warehouse, and so on. Also used by the retailers to get to track which items are being sold and what are the recommendations that they can do to the customer. This is in terms of the enterprises. Now, again, the database, if it is used in the banking, then the bank can store the information about the customer, their accounts, what type of accounts they have, whether it's the fixed account and so on, whether they have taken the loan, and what type of transaction they are doing. So if the bank is providing a credit card, then they will maintain the database containing the information about how many purchases that person has done using this card, what type of payment he has done, what is the monthly statement, that has to be generated. That information will be there in the database. When it comes to the finance organization, they can have information about the stocks and bonds that they have purchased, and all the people who are doing the online trading in that finance organization, that is finance institution or finance company, that data will be there in the database. Now coming to the universities, we are all familiar, apart from the employee salary and so on, student information like how many courses are there, who has registered in the course, and what are the grades of the student, that information. In the reservation, whether it is a railway or airline reservation, so which train or which plane is going to come, that is the schedule, and what where that flight is there, and how who has booked it, who has cancelled it, all the information will be there. When it comes to the, again, just to give them another example, the telecommunication, the phone that you are using. So how many calls you have made, and what type of billing that you have, whether you have a prepaid billing or a postpaid billing, and the information regarding where you are using that, your location and so on. So that is also stored in the databases. Now let's come to the history of the database. So before the databases were used in computers, in olden days, people used to use the file-based system. So when I say why this Amitabh Bachchan and Jaya Bardari's photo is there is, this is an old movie. So this is 1970s, a super hit movie, 1987, super hit movie of that time. So during that time we were not born. That is why I said, so some of you may not be knowing this particular movie. That was a very famous movie. Why I put this movie is it was a famous thing. And similarly, during those days, file-based system was also a famous thing that was used in the computer. So what was being done during that particular time? I am going to discuss it